Welcome to Fleet Equipment from the Floor, ACT Expo 2024, powered by Cummins. I'm Jason Morgan, Content Director for Fleet Equipment. We have a great show for you. We're going to head into the hall. We're going to get booth news from Peterbilt, Daimler Truck North America, Penske, Accelera by Cummins. We are going to kick it off out here, though, at the Ride and Drive. This is where the rubber meets the road, and we are talking with Jose Samperio, Vice President, North America on Highway for Cummins. Jose, great to see you.
Jason, always a pleasure to see you. This is a great event. I always look forward to being here.
Yeah, ACT Expo, super exciting. We're out in the Ride and Drive. We got the Cummins X15N powered Peterbilt Model 579 there. Super excited to get in this truck later. As we head into the show, what are you looking at in terms of big trends and talking points that you're expecting here this year?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Every year seems a little different. There seems to be a mood or a theme, and as we go towards the future years, I think the trend this year is what we can do instead of focusing too much on the things that we can't do. I think people are starting to figure out what are the things that I actually can do, and they come into a show like this and look at all the choices that they have and all the technology, and then people are starting to look harder into maybe I can do that, maybe I can try that, I can try this on that lane or that territory. And I think that's going to be the theme for the next year. Look at places where you can actually take a step up and do something, and I think that's the trend for the year.
Right. No, I mean, because you got natural gas now, you got even more efficient diesel, you got electric, battery electric, hydrogen coming down the line. You know, you're talking with a lot of customers. How are they approaching decarbonization more broadly? Is that a topic they're talking about in kind of this larger scope?
Yeah, I think people are looking at, hey, I'm doing a demo, I'm just looking at this one truck, and then now people are thinking about choices. Okay, what are all the choices that I have? They're looking harder into their operation and looking at what fits my operation and what are the choices that I have. Is it a low carbon fuel like renewable diesel or biodiesel? Is it a gaseous fuel because the infrastructure is already existing and growing like a natural gas? Do I have a particular need for an electric traction system because of the markets that I serve, like a school bus with the kids and the calming effect that electric bus has? And I think that's what people are looking at, and especially on a show like this, they're looking at choices. What can I do? Not being boxed into one particular technology, just more looking at what fits me. It's not a matter, we always tell people, it's not a matter of what's the right choice, it's a matter of what's the choice for you and what's your fit. And I think this is a great choice or a great show for people to explore their choices.
Right, well, and when you talk about that too, there are a lot of choices. How are you working with customers? I mean, no, on the battery electric side, when that was rolled out here a couple years ago, it was a very consulting approach, right? Is that broadening into the engine and other fleet makeup conversation?
It is. I think in the past few years we move away from, hey, I need a demo with an electric truck, so can you give it to me? And that's how we started. And then we move into no, just hold on. Before you ask me for a demo on an electric truck, let's just look at how you're operating. What are you trying to achieve? How do you run? What are your goals? And then we move the conversation forward, like, okay, if that's what you're trying to achieve, here are your choices. And you can do a mix for your long lanes. You need range. You can try renewable natural gas. For your shorter lanes or potentially for your terminal tractors, electric is probably right for you. So we're moving away from, I want to do one demo into, I'm looking at my entire portfolio today. And 5 years hence, the technology is advancing. So that's what we're doing right now. That's an industry, really. It's not only us, but the industry. That's what we really need to do. Just look at 5 years from now, how do we move away from, I'm doing one demo into, this is what the portfolio looks like for my entire operation.
Right, bringing that to scale. Jose, great to catch up with you. I appreciate you taking the time. All right, we're going to head inside because David Sickles has connected with Tim Frazier. They're going to talk powertrain development and all the new technologies coming down the line. Let's see what we can learn.
Hey, we are here with Tim Frazier. He is the Vice President of Research and Technology at Cummins. Tim, thank you so much for taking the time.
Pleasure to be here, David.
So, first question for you. When it comes to developing new powertrain technologies, you have all these different regulatory requirements, and of course you want to just increase the levels of sustainability as a whole. What are the things that you're thinking about as you are trying to develop that next set of?
Yeah, it's a great question. As you've heard, we're building this new, what we call HELM platform of engines. In that sense, what we're doing is designing all of our new engines to run not only on the incumbent fuels of natural gas and diesel, but make sure those engines going forward are capable of running on lower sustainable, low carbon fuels. So really from the base engine up, we're designing specific technologies to enable burning those fuels, but 80 to 85% of the base engine will be common with the diesel. That allows us to develop them at a low dollars, but really, more importantly, allows us to integrate those technologies into our customers' fleets so we get them out into the fleets, out into the space sooner.
Sure, and those are obviously two very important things to keep in mind. So obviously, here at the show, we're seeing all kinds of different powertrain technologies for fleets to decarbonize, but that's kind of a blessing and the curse. There's all these things to choose from, but how do you choose? So, do you have any tips for these fleets? What questions do they need to be thinking about when they're deciding which technology they want to go for?
Yeah, number one, you got to educate yourself. We have to help with that education. So at Cummins, we're building a set of fleet-based tools that lets the customers be aware what's right for them, because the application matters in these decision makings. How you're going to go about doing your daily work, if you're going to change the way you do your daily work, what your targets are for CO2 reduction. Sure. And of all these fleets, still, it's very important to get the job done. And it's still about making some profitability in those markets, which are tricky to do today. So being very aware of how you're going to use it becomes important. First and foremost, biggest question there is, can you get the resource available to fuel or energy or provide energy to your truck? So understanding what new low carbon energy technologies are coming into your domain, into your space where you're operating, that becomes super critical. Sure. Then understanding, can you get the range done? Becomes the next most critical piece. And then finally understanding, how do you make money out of that as an end customer? How do you actually buy the right thing, blend it into your fleet, make sure you can service it and sustain it, and then get it to do the job you need to do.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Well, Tim, thank you so much for your time here. Really, really appreciate that. And I think Jason has finally made his way over to the Cummins booth. Let's catch up with him.
Thanks, David.
We made it inside to the Cummins booth. We have a lot coming up. We're going to hit up the DTNA booth. We're going to stop by Peterbilt. We're going to check in with Penske. We're going to be here for the Accelera by Cummins press conference. But first, we're talking X15N and the entire Cummins Helm platform with Puneet Chouar, General Manager, Alternative Fuels and Fuel Delivery Systems with Cummins. Puneet, great to see you.
Thank you, Jason. Good to see you as well.
Hey, so you got the Helm platform here, which is the internal combustion system for alternative fuels. You got the X15N. We saw that outside with the Peterbilt, which was awesome. Can you just kind of tell me, how does all this technology fit into broader decarbonization plans?
Sure. And again, I think it's Helm loosely, how we put it, is high efficiency, low emissions, and multiple fuels, which means that you've got a combination of engines that you could use for multiple fuels, but with the base architecture the same, so that it's easier to fit in with the OEMs, but also gives the power of choice to the end customer.
Right.
Again, with that, with the base engine kind of having this similar, it also helps in the reliability and the durability of the engines as well. Mm-hmm. And the first of that engine is the X15 engine, which you kind of mentioned. And it's out there on the floor as well. I think we've got about 5 trucks with the X15N, which is powered, some on the ride and drive and some certainly on the floor. And then we've got the diesel platform, which is going to be based on the same Helm platform, which is coming out closer to 2027, just to make sure that the 2027 regulations that are coming in play in the country is what we will be compliant with. And then we've got, of course, plans for the hydrogen engine that you see here as well, and that'll be out in the future as well. So I think it's critical for us that this platform, again, is going to be our mainstay for the next decade or 2 decades, which helps us decarbonize because it's cleaner diesels, more efficient diesels, burns lesser fuel. And then when you look at natural gas, you look at a completely different set of fuel, both in terms of one that even if it's a fossil fuel, it's 16 to 17% reduction in the carbon footprint.
Right.
And then when you couple that with renewable natural gas, you have a negative carbon index score. And which is what I think a lot of the companies are looking at, is to say that how do they reduce their ESG goals and meet them and reduce their footprint. And the Helm platform, both a combination of whether it's the cleaner diesels, natural gas, and then in the future hydrogen, should help lay the path out for the customers to kind of get to that point. So I think for us, this is extremely exciting time. It's extremely critical. It's a whole lot of product launches that we're doing, and I think we've got the Cummins mic behind it.
Right. How do you help helped fleets and customers wrap their head around that decarbonization, what it means, what the value is of reducing emissions, not just on the efficiency and reliability side, but meeting those sustainability and decarbonization goals. How do you talk that through with a broad portfolio of options?
Yeah, and I think some of it is also because of the fact that we've got this broad portfolio of choices, the power of choice. It's a little more easier conversation because we are not trying to fit a particular solution in with a customer. I think it all starts with the customer. It all starts with the fact that what does the customer do today? What are the routes they're running? What kind of trucks they're running? What kind of applications they're running? Right. And the applications are so diverse in the trucking industry that if you get to know one customer, you get to know one application. And it's just how it is. And so our conversations have always, like I said, it is central to the customer, central to the operation that the customer does. And then you try and understand to say that if this is what you do, which of the technologies fits? And if you step back from a Cummins broader portfolio, we've also got the electric, battery electric. We've also got some of the alternative energies like diesel, natural gas. And so you've got to work the way with the customers to make sure, one, the operations are less disruptive. And is it sustainable enough in the long term? Can they get the fueling? Is there infrastructure available for these fuels, whether it's electric, whether it's natural gas, or whether it's going to be hydrogen in the future, or whether it's cleaner diesels today? And it's not a light switch event. It's not that you can overnight change from one particular fuel type to the other. It is a journey. It is a transition plan. And that's how we lay it down with the customers and help, again, partnerships, collaborations, and working with different companies help. It's something that we can't do alone. We need the fueling infrastructure folks. We need the service side of the capability as well. We need the OEMs to come to the table with this one. So I think that's how we kind of help lay the journey to say that maybe today your operation demands that you maybe shift to a cleaner diesel. Yeah. In some cases, it's about the fact that, well, in the entire fleet of trucks that you have, you can use a certain amount of natural gas engines. Mm-hmm. And then you can, in the next few years, you look at your operations again. Can you get more natural gas? Can you need more diesels? What do you need? And I think that's how you help the customers lay down a path to say that it just doesn't become a cliff event and say that all of a sudden, here's where your goals are and you kind of fall down. Right. And it's a slow and gradual journey. So I think that's what we're trying to do. And I think our relationships with the customers are helpful. It's, again, humbling to say that how much customers trust us, and we don't want to lose that trust.
Right. Okay, well, let's dive into the X15N, because I think this platform is renewing a lot of interest in natural gas, and fleets are really looking at it. Highlights from reliability, performance. What's going on with the X15N?
Yeah, so again, very, very excited about the product. Like I said, we've got about 5 or 6 of those in trucks here. It's available in the Peterbilt and the Kenworth chassis, and we'll have the Freightliner chassis coming in next year. We've had this engine now running in the U.S. market for almost about a year or so. Within the U.S. market itself, we've got over 1 million miles on the trucks, and we haven't seen any problems on the truck for now. Mm-hmm. The feedback that we've got from the customers has been absolutely amazing, from going back to say that it drives like a truck to then saying that we love it. The hills, they run it like it's like a piece of cake for them. The power, the torque, the reliability of it, the ability and the ease of how the drivers are fitting into it, it's very, very similar to what we were expecting. And some of the drivers' feedback has been that it drives as if that a diesel-like drivability, which is great feedback from them. And if you look at it from a global lens standpoint, and again, going back to the Helm platform that we have, the base architecture, we've had it running in some of the global markets for a while. And in the global markets, we have over 1 billion miles on this one, which is a phenomenal amount of mileage that this truck has gone through. And that's just on the road. And over and above all of that, we've had engines abused in test cells. And when I say abuse, we really abuse them. We run them in different duty cycles to make sure that we go through the ebbs and falls. And we run all 4 corners of the application to make sure that we want to try and break it as much as we can, so that when the customers get a hand of it, it's reliable for them. And so the feedback has been tremendous. We cannot be more happier with that. There is a lot of interest from companies, a lot of interest from bigger fleets, smaller fleets. And then I think as we've started kind of offering the entire powertrain, right, with the transmission as well, with our fuel delivery system as well, it just is a full, complete package which we can help service along with the customers and give them a much, much better experience.
Right. Puneet, thanks so much for taking the time. Great catching up with you.
Thank you, Jason. It's a pleasure.
We're not just talking product here, we're talking education, specifically on regulations. There's a lot to know with CARB Advanced Clean Fleets and EPA GHG Phase 3. David Sickles is with Rebecca Schenker. He's going to talk about all of that and give us an overview of what's going on in the regulation space. Let's see what we learn.
We are here with Rebecca Schenker. She is the Vice President of Regulatory Compliance for GNA, a TRC company. Rebecca, thank you so much for being here. So I do not have to tell you that there is so much going on with regulatory compliance right now. Can you give us just kind of, a high-level understanding of what we need to understand about CARB's Advanced Clean Fleets regulation?
Okay, so if you operate in California, you need to be paying attention because ACF could and likely will hit you. If you have any single drayage truck, you need to pay attention.
Just one truck.
For drayage, yeah. And if you are a large entity, that would be $50 million or 50 trucks nationwide. With, again, one truck in California, you have to pay attention. And so CARB's ACF rule fundamentally is pushing all vehicles that are Class 2B and higher, so anything kind of Ford 250 or greater, towards zero emissions over time. The first targets start the end of this year. So by the end of 2024, there are fleets who are going to need some portion of zero emissions as part of their operations for California.
So if you haven't been thinking about this, it's
Now's
time to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
So tell us about the EPA's GHG Phase 3 standards. How are these different?
So you have rules that impact fleets directly, and that would be ACF. That's the CARB saying you need, fleet XYZ, you need to go zero. Okay. EPA's Phase 3 is different because it's talking to the OEMs. The OEMs need to sell more low and zero tailpipe emission product as part of their broad portfolio, and that amount of zero or low emission needs to go up over time. So EPA Phase 3 is actually technically technology neutral, meaning OEMs can decide how they are going to hit their CO2 emission targets. Sure. But there's definitely some assumptions baked in that some portion of that technology to get there is going to be zero.
That's understandable too. So where do these regulations kind of overlap?
I mean, if you were looking at it, not necessarily EPA, but just CARB. CARB developed a zero-emission OEM rule. Hey, OEMs, you need to sell more zero-emission vehicles. That's the ACT rule. Let's throw in more acronyms. Or the ACF rule says, okay, fleets, you need to buy more. So at least in that sense, there's kind of an alignment. They're not perfectly aligned in terms of the numbers, but hey, manufacturers need to sell more, fleets need to buy more. We're taking care of supply and demand. EPA's Phase 3 doesn't exactly match up with that, but it is focusing again on the OEMs, and it's saying you need to sell more zero. We don't care how you do it. We don't care if it's technically zero, but you need to hit these tailpipe emission targets for greenhouse gases. So however you get there, figure it out. And what OEMs are going to do with that for fleet buyers, that's the kind of wild card. How are you going to force fleets to buy equipment they don't really want to buy? We're going to have to figure that out over time.
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot to talk about, but that's why we're here, and it's an exciting time. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Jason, we're going to go back to you.
A lot going on here at ACT Expo. David Sickles has the latest headlines.
Daimler Truck North America showed off an eCascadia autonomous demonstrator truck built on a modular, scalable, propulsion-agnostic platform, with the hopes of using this truck to imagine the different types of technologies and situations that customers will need in the future. Also in the company's booth was this Altec all-electric bucket truck used on the vocational EM2 design with a 210 kilowatt-hour lithium iron phosphate battery pack. The EM2 is built on the Freightliner M2 106 Plus platform and features an integrated battery electric Detroit E powertrain. There will be Class 6 and Class 7 variations available. Peterbilt showcased its lineup of electric and natural gas engine vehicles, including a Model 579 spec'd with a Cummins X15N natural gas engine. There was also a Model 579 EV displayed with a Muncie Terzo ePTO and wet kit. There was also a Model 520 EV with a McNilis automated side loader body designed for refuse applications. And here's the Model 220 EV with a Morgan van body designed for pickup and delivery and regional haul. Also on display at the Peterbilt booth was a Toyota fuel cell module for Peterbilt Model 579 HFC and a full line of PACCAR EV charging stations. Penske Transportation Solutions and zero-emission energy infrastructure company Forefront Power have formed a new joint venture named Penske Energy. It aims to help commercial fleet operators plan, design, and deploy optimized EV charging infrastructure for their needs. Penske Energy will offer advisory consulting on EV charging and energy infrastructure, covering strategic planning, technology assessment, infrastructure designs, and project implementation. Planning to leverage Penske's experience in vehicle and route feasibility, the company will guide fleets through the entire process, from system design to understanding incentives, and from implementation to ongoing operation. Accelera by Cummins had several technologies on display, including its FCE 300 fuel cell engine designed for commercial vehicles with extended duty cycles, its 14XE Gen 4.5 axle, and an International RH Class 8 truck featuring two 150 kilowatt FCEs and 14XE E-axles. Also on display was the BP97E NMC battery pack with an energy density of 97 kilowatt hours, and its BP107E LFP battery, designed for longer battery life and faster charging capabilities. Plus, there was its 650-volt fuel cell e-compressor, its next-gen 1CS 2022 traction system, and its X15 hydrogen engine, featuring up to 500 horsepower and 1,850 foot-pounds of torque.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about all the regulations coming down the line, but there's even more to talk about to really get our arms around this. That's why we're here with Tom Swenson, Director of Global Regulatory Affairs with Cummins. Tom, thanks for taking the time. We've cornered you here in this hallway to track you down, to ask you questions on EPA, what's going on with EPA, what's going on with CARB. So we've talked a lot about CARB and the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation. There's also Advanced Clean Trucks regulation. We got EPA, GHG, Phase 3. One's federal, one state, with maybe rolling out to other states. What's the landscape right now in regulation?
Boy, it is a confusing landscape. We have, like you said, the federal regulations that are overarching all 50 states. Then we've got California, which has pioneered, and they've got a history of pioneering their own regulations. They're implementing both Advanced Clean Truck and Advanced Clean Fleet. And then we're also starting to see other states adopt those California regulations. And so we're sort of starting to see this patchwork of regulations where the federal covers the whole nation, and then we've got specific states that are adopting CARB, which are, the rules are similar, but they're kind of different at the same time. And so we're trying to help our fleet customers sort of navigate which one applies to them and right. When that applies.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the state I'm based in versus the state I operate in as well.
Yes.
You know, and I know it's early and this is all still shaking out. People talk about CARB regulations being adopted kind of across states. Is that a trend that you see happening broadly? Is it still state by state, and what the mood is there? How's this panning out?
Yeah, we're seeing right now there's about a dozen states that have either indicated or have, I guess, adopted the CARB regulations in certain timeframes. So it's not all rolling out at the same time, and so we have to keep track of that too, is sort of when each one of these rolls out. And then there's another consolidation, if you will, relative to tailpipe standards. CARB and EPA are going to align in 2027, and so one of the questions in our mind is, will that same alignment happen relative to GHG?
Right. advanced clean trucks. Now, we've already talked a lot about advanced clean fleets, but this is different. Advanced clean trucks, can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, so advanced clean trucks, that's a requirement on the manufacturer of the engines, or not the engines, the vehicles in entire vehicle manufacturers. They have to sell a certain percentage in every year, and there's the percentages are different by weight class of zero emission. So technically that's technology neutral, but there's really two. There's battery electric and there's fuel cell that fall into that zero emission category.
Right, right. So, I mean, I appreciate all the, I feel a little more grounded in this, but the more I learn, the more confused I also get, right? So, you know, I'm sure that's the same for fleets. What kind of resources or even conversations can they have with you all or other partners? What do you recommend to help them keep on track?
Right, lots of moving parts, very complex, very confusing. First and foremost, reach out to your vehicle dealer, right? Whoever you're buying vehicles from now, their best interest is to make sure that you're happy and compliant. Please reach out to Cummins. We've got a lot of resources to bring to bear. And then finally, you know, if you've got a really complex situation, you might consider wanting to get a consultant to bring sort of that holistic approach and look.
Right, because it really looks at your fleet as a whole going down the line as you start to decarbonize.
Yeah, and every duty cycle is different, and so it gets very complex very quickly.
Tom, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Glad to join you.
That'll do it for this episode of Fleet Equipment from the Floor, ACT Expo 2024, powered by Cummins. I'm Jason Morgan, Content Director of Fleet Equipment. We'll see you in the next video. We're going to have news from Kenworth International. We're going to catch up with Accelera by Cummins. A lot to look forward to. We'll see you next time.